I absolutely believe that Rishi Sunak, after what has been, let's put our hand up, a pretty turbulent period of British politics and conservative politics, that we're now on the right course. And if I may just personally pay tribute to Ben Wallace, first of all, I think he's the longest serving defence secretary, and with all the turmoil that we've had in British politics recently, he has been that rock of stability for defence and security. He's ensured that Britain exhibits the expected leadership and indeed courage in supporting Ukraine in its hour of need with that military assistance early on from the very start, as Europe once again confronts state aggression. He's been well respected across the defence and security community, not just here in the UK, but also internationally. And I should say that as we've entered this pretty volatile and unpredictable and increasingly dangerous chapter in global politics, Ben Wallace has been pushing for an increase in defence spending. So these are some of the things that Grant Shapps will have to confront. But, Grant is a very competent and capable minister. We came in together in 2005. He understands the Whitehall machine. He is one of the best cabinet communicators that is there at the moment. He sits on the National Security Council, so he's familiar with the security picture. He's also a pilot, very familiar with the air domain too, and has just come back from Ukraine. He was there in Kyiv last week, so very familiar with what is happening there. I should also underline that any Secretary of State that comes into the MOD will immediately be supported by one of the most professional civil service machines in the world. And also, and I say this as a former officer, very experienced military personnel with huge wealth of experience across all three services, from the Chief of Defence Staff down. So yes, it's a tough job, but I think Grant Shapps is very capable and competent to fill Ben's shoes.
Does it bother you at all that this is, I think, the fifth job in government that Shapps has had over the last year, and I know, in terms of voters in particular, what we hear an awful lot is this sense that there isn't big picture, blue sky thinking going on, that it's all about political expediency and people are being moved around. And how on earth do you formulate long-term big policies when the day-to-day seems so chaotic? Do you think it's the right thing to be moving people at this sort of pace?
Well, sometimes these things have to happen, as we see. Ben Wallace has indicated that he wanted to step back. You underline something very, very important, that the Prime Minister is able to set out his stall where he wants to take the party and indeed the country, backed by a cabinet that believes in his vision, rather than pursuing perhaps their own post-election agendas. We've got the party conference coming up. We've got the King's speech as well. These are all things, I think, that will shape the Prime Minister's vision and show that he has command over his party, over policy, and where the country is going to go, setting out that stall for the eventual general election. I would say back in the terrain of security and defence, we won't see any great change of policy at all with the arrival of Grant Shapps. I hope we will continue leading Europe on our support for Ukraine, recognizing that what Russia is doing isn't just about Ukraine. It's about a change in balance of geopolitics. It's a strengthening relationship between Russia and China. It's about a very fast changing world, which Britain needs to recognize that we need to work with our allies, particularly the United States, in standing up for.
And in terms of the team now assembled, you talked about the Prime Minister needing to put his stamp on it, and also not to have people who are perhaps pursuing their own agendas, but rather people who are ready to fight the next general election together. Do you think there are still some changes needed? I mean, the Home Secretary seems to be a continuing thorn in the Prime Minister's side.
Well, that is for the Prime Minister to work out. There has been talk of a wider reshuffle. I'm not close to any of this. All parties are tribal to some degrees. That isn't just isolated to the Conservative Party, but it is the command, it is the strategic vision of the leader that should be able to unite and inspire the party, but also broaden our appeal beyond our ranks. That's what wins the next general election. I absolutely believe that Rishi Sunak, after what has been, let's put our hand up, a pretty turbulent period of British politics and conservative politics, that we're now on the right course. I think Claire Cortino coming in on the energy portfolio is brilliant as well. Again, another great communicator. She'll understands that brief as well. Historically, our party has always been successful when we operate from the centre right. That's what appeals to the UK electorate. And I think that's where now we're positioning ourselves. When we look disunited, when we have competing visions, when policies are driven from one, corner of our party alone, that's not an election-willing formula. So, what the nation needs is to see a prime minister with that bold vision. That's what the nation needs, and I think that's as we close the gap with Labour. We don't know what Labour stands for. Don't forget at all. We're starting to use the talent in the ranks of the party that's being harnessed. I think this is all good news for the Conservative Party and the next general election.
You said close the gap with Labour. It's a 20-point gap in polls. Do you think that that is closable by the next election?
If I may, these get repeated all the time. Oh, look at the polls, they're 20 points behind. What should be mentioned, if I may, is the 25% odd that get removed when those polls are done of the don't knows. There's a 25% out there that are still making up their minds. That's the soft vote, if you like. They're the people that perhaps have absented themselves from supporting the Conservative Party because of the turmoil that I spoke about over the last couple of years. They will start to make up their mind. They will start to ask themselves, who do they want to run this country over the next 4 to 5 years? And we've heard Labour, clamour to say, oh, we're not going to touch a wealth tax and so forth. They have to say that because they've never shown their fiscal responsibility in the past. They're known for putting up taxes. There are other taxes which they would like to be clobbered with. So I think there's everything to fight for. That 25%, luring them back into supporting the Conservative Party, enticing them, encouraging them, winning their support. That's what the next few months will be all about.
Well, it sounds like you kicked off the general election campaign already. It's all dependent on that 25% don't knows. Let's hope you can convince them, you and the rest of the party. Tobias Ellwood, thank you very much for joining me.